Recording. Okay, so we're going to get started in a couple of minutes. We are here in I Aspire Books group, and we're going to have a great discussion with two of my favorite, not favorite, but favorite male readers, Philip and Walford. And so we're going to get started in just a few minutes with this discussion. This is something that I've wanted to do for quite some time. Walford gave me the idea once he finished the book, and he was like, oh my goodness, we have to talk about this. And so that gave me the idea to do a book discussion from a male perspective on Oh Romeo, Romeo. And forgive me, I did not introduce myself. For those that don't know, my name is Kendi Ward. I am an author, speaker, minister. And tonight we're going to be discussing the first book in my Knight in Damaged Armor series, which is titled Oh Romeo, Romeo. There are 3 books in the series that feature the Knight brothers, but we're going to start with this one, the first one, the baby. Well, that's not the baby, that's the oldest in the series. So we're going to discuss that book tonight, and I am so super excited about this discussion. So thank you to I Aspire. Oh wait, hold on, we got a special guest coming into the room. I see one more brother coming into the room to join the discussion with us tonight. So I'm just going to ask you guys to go ahead and introduce yourselves, and then we can get started on the discussion. So Philip, you want to introduce yourself? 30-second commercial, not like the whole bibliography, autobiography, like.
I thought I had more time. Hi, my name is Philip White. I am an avid reader of Kendi Ward's work, and I am very excited to discuss this book with so much purpose and meaning. And actually, I have a testimony about what happened to me today when I finished reading it. So we'll get into that later. I'm glad to be here.
Glad to have you. And you're rapping 242. I see that with the flag in the background. Okay, Walford, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Walford Rule, specialist in the United States Army, and I am following Kendi's trilogy so far. Oh Romeo, Oh Romeo. Oh Romeo, Romeo was the book that I read. I'm on the second installation right now, finishing that up, and we're going to see what we get into here tonight.
Well, thank you for being here, and thank you for your service to this country. And I see Mr. Quincy's audio is still connecting. So once that connects, then he can go ahead and introduce himself. So I'm just gonna start off with this question, because you know what intrigued me so much. Hey, there he is. Hey, you want to introduce yourself, Quincy?
My name is Quincy Kenneth Ward. Good evening, everyone.
What do you do?
So what?
What do you do?
I'm a producer and an IT consultant.
Awesome. And what else?
What else?
And my favorite brother.
Oh, all right. I'm your favorite and only brother.
My favorite and only brother. Thank you for joining us. So I'm just going to ask the first question that intrigued me about having this conversation with you 3 is because there is a myth that, you know, men don't read. So that's the first question. Is that true, or is that a myth? Is that a figment of our imagination? Do men read, or do they not read?
Obviously, we do, because we read your book. We men read, but I think that's a myth, that and a big misconception, because even I read your book while I was in training. So not only that, I noticed that the guys that were in there with me, they were reading, whether it was training material we had to read, or whether it was religious material. Some persons assimilated to a new faith, so they had to read up on their faith and aspects of it, their new religion, in order to make that their official religion per the army regulations. They had to, when they request from the chaplain that that be their, faith, they have to be able to be proficient in some of the things, Also, just magazines and other things. But I'm gonna let the other guys talk. But men do
Yeah,
read.
To read. All right. Who else
abs-
will jump in with the answer there?
absolutely. I'll just piggyback off of that. Seeing Quincy's on the go, I remember Quincy bought a book for me about 4 years ago when our second set of daughters were born, Shoe Dog by Phil Knight. And I binge read it one sitting, like I did with Oh Romeo. It's just something about reading that takes you away, and it also stimulates a part of your mind that nothing else can do. So definitely men read, and ladies, if you're watching, you need to find a reader. You need to find a reader who is well versed in not only the Bible and other uplifting things, but once he reads, he'll pour back into your
Yes.
life.
That's awesome, Philip. I like that. Quincy, what you got to say about this? Men read? And
Yeah, so it's a myth that men don't read. You They may not necessarily read everything that the people who are saying it, they may not read the same things all the time. So there's all kinds of different reading, like reading the newspaper, even if it's that, you're still gonna be reading something. So I think it's a myth that men don't read.
Okay, so then that gives me a great segue into my next question before we get into the book. So what are you guys reading, if anything, right now? Like what is, I don't know if you have Kindle, what's in your Kindle, what's in your Audible, what's on your bookshelf? What are you reading?
Next thing I'll be reading is the third book in the series. I haven't read that yet. But I have this big book that Kendi actually bought for me. I'm about 50% through this now.
What?
Don't Drop the Mic by T.D. Jakes. So I'm reading that.
So quick, what's one takeaway from the book? I haven't started. I bought you
One
one and I
takeaway?
bought myself one, but I haven't started it yet. So like, what's one like aha that you've gotten?
The aha for me was right. Yeah, when I introduced myself, I said I was a producer and also an IT consultant. T.D. Jakes specified that you don't have to choose one thing. So that's something that I've always been looking at for years. Like, okay, everyone's saying you got to pick one thing and specialize in that and just do that one thing. T.D. Jakes in this book is telling me you don't have to choose the one thing. You can be this and you can be that. You can do both.
Right. Look at Tyler Perry, actor, director, producer, shoe scrubber. Like he is everything. Like you don't have to choose one thing. Philip, what are you reading, if anything, right now? If anything, I know you are reading something. What are you reading?
Absolutely. I'm heavy on audiobooks. Just staple go-tos. Think and Grow Rich, obviously. Believe, Conceive, Achieve, David Immunity. I plan to read, obviously, one night. I saw the excerpt at the end of Oh Romeo to see the continuation of the story, but heavy on the motivational self-help books, and obviously now religious fiction.
Yay. Walford, you reading anything now?
I'm reading the second installation.
Oh yeah, you said that.
5 more chapters, and they are the juicy chapters that I couldn't wait to get to, but I've been kind of tied up. But I plan on finishing that up definitely before the new year, so I can start the third installation when I get my signed copy. But other than that, I have my regular magazine subscriptions, like Ballistic, which is a firearm magazine, and then I have my Florida Sportsman subscription, which is like a fishing magazine. So things that I'm interested in, that's the kind of stuff that I try to to keep up with.
Good stuff. All right, so I'm gonna read an
But
excerpt.
I need
Say it
2022.
again.
I need a new book 2022.
We'll take care of that. We'll take care of that. So I'm gonna read an excerpt from the book, and then I have a question for you, gentlemen. So this is actually at the very beginning. This scene is at the very beginning of the book, but really sets for the reader an insight into the struggles that the hero has, which is Rome. With he's tough to like, but we want to see characters transform, from the beginning of the story to the end of the story. We want to see growth. We want to see transformation. He had a lot of growth and transformation to do. So anyways, let me just read the excerpt. Without pay, Rome yelled at his coach. I know you just lost your mind suspending me indefinitely without pay. He had showered and changed and was now in his head coach's office. He suspected a suspension. Why was it indefinitely? So what if he punched a referee? Hadn't this scenario played out before in '96 when Rodman had butted the ref? He'd gotten a 6-game suspension. Why was he getting an indefinite suspension? That was reserved for the alcoholics and drug addicts, which he was neither. No, you lost your mind when you swung on Siegel, Moore yelled. Rome was not faced because yelling was the norm with Moore. Coach, why is the commissioner acting like I sat in the middle of the court and snorted a line of coke? We got into a fight. You punched a referee, Romeo. That is not tolerated in this league. He swung at me too. I know you saw him swing at me. Of course he swung at you. You hit him. This is stupid, Rome muttered. Indefinitely? The playoffs were next week. He couldn't be on no indefinite suspension. When is that punk going to make up his mind about how long the suspension is? The commissioner will make that announcement tomorrow, Morris said and went silent. Rome hated when he was silent. Silence meant a lecture was coming, and he wasn't in no mood for a lecture. Yes, he knew that he was 31. He needed to grow up, start being more mature and responsible, yada, yada, yada. He knew the drill. He heard it a lot. He was a butthead. He knew that. Truth was truth. And the truth is, if you keep telling a person a thing, he will become that thing. He'd been called stupid, good for nothing punk for a long time, and that's exactly what he'd become. Life and death are in the power of the tongue. Romeo heard the Bible verse he'd memorized in days gone by. He was surprised that he still remembered that nonsense. He stood to leave, but his coach's words stayed with him. Why are you so angry, Romeo? So that's the question, right? So Romeo had this anger that he's a professional athlete, a professional basketball player, always getting into trouble on court because of his anger. So we learned that Romeo has always had anger issues since he was a child, but he didn't know why he was angry. And as an adult, he knew why, but he didn't want to deal with it. So the question is the way Romeo dealt with his emotions, hurt and rejection by lashing out in anger a typical response to hurt and rejection for men?
I'll tackle it first. It's not a typical response to that extreme, but it's a similar response. I'll give you an example. So when he said to the coach, it's not like I snorted a line of coke in the middle of the court. We faced with a similar situation with our significant others, our relationships. If you do something, you probably leave the cap off the toothpaste or something, and then you get into some minor scuffle or argument about that. And you think to yourself, I'm not out here spending all night drinking with my friends or womanizing. So the feeling inside is the same, but like you said in the beginning, there's growth through that process as a man. So we do at first react to that similar way. But when we realize the growth in ourselves through, obviously reading and experience, The reaction is the same, but it's toned down into more of an understanding approach.
Awesome, thank you. Anybody else want to tackle that before I move to the next question?
I don't know that it's typical. I had the opportunity to grow up with a very um, mild-tempered father figure in the person of my uncle Hillgrove Lightborn, and he almost never had that kind of response. But then to piggyback off what Phil said, he was more matured and experienced. You know, he was an older man, and I think that when we're young and inexperienced in life, in situations and human relations as well, um, we think that we are unstoppable and that we're made of Teflon and indestructible and all those kind of things. So we let things fly off the top more.
Yeah.
So, and that comes from processing, trying to make sense of what information we have, being students for so long, and then being told by our parents and guardians, the way that we should behave in certain situations without having the hand-on experience in those situations, and trying to find our bearings. So I think that a lot of those things, and like with Rome, him growing up in the church and everything just had to come full circle, and he had that development, that character development, that overall development, as you see later on in the book. So it happens. I don't know that it's typical for everyone, because culturally people also, are taught to respond differently
Right.
in certain situations. So to say broadly that it's typical, I don't think that it is, but it definitely speaks to the lack of maturity, or maybe even a cultural thing, because even as Bahamians, sometimes um, we are more verbose, or more like boisterous in what we're in our response.
Aggressive.
Yeah, more aggressive as Caribbean people from Caribbean,
Yeah.
African diaspora. So like that.
Yeah, that's a great point. That's a great point. Quincy, you have anything on that?
The only thing I could add to that is a lot of times, especially in our culture, like Walford was saying, like men are taught to not really show emotion or to look,
Weak.
weak or anything like that. So you use anger as a way to deal with many situations, even though anger may not necessarily be what you're feeling, but it's what you're going to display because that's what you want to show.
Because it's
So
strong. It's a strong emotion.
right, it's a negative, strong emotion.
Yeah.
So you want to show that so you can feel, like you're going to be respected more by displaying anger. Like for example, especially when you like even with dealing with kids, you're gonna feel like you're gonna get a better response if you yell at them and say,
Yeah.
"Hey, do this right now," versus trying to speak to them calmly. They're not gonna respond to that most of the time. They may, but if you want that immediate reaction right then and there, yelling at them is gonna obviously upset the child, but they're still gonna react in a certain way of you think to you and may feel like, especially most men may feel like that's a respect thing, but it's really
Fair.
you're really instilling fear in them versus actually getting them to respect you and listen to what you're actually saying. They're just doing it out of fear.
Mhm.
So I think that is oh
Oh, we lost Walford.
yeah.
You know what? That's such a great point that you made, Quincy, because I don't emote either. Like I'm not like a super emotional person, and I only really emote anger or anger, like it's no range. So today, something happened and I was angry, like I was so angry, and the Holy Spirit really challenged me to dig deeper. It was like, okay, are you angry? I need you to dig deeper. What emotion is it really? And it was disappointment. It wasn't, I was angry at the person because I was disappointed in them in the way that they acted. So it was disappointment. And I was emoting anger, and it's easier for me just to express and say, hey, I'm really disappointed in the way that you behaved. I didn't expect that. That would have been an easier response than responding with anger. So anyways, that's good. I'm going to move to the next question. I really wanted to ask Walford this question because this was a conversation that we had, when he finished the book. But anyways, a lot of the mess Romeo got into in the book, well, in his life, was because of his best friend, Rich. And Romeo knew that this relationship was detrimental, but also one of his qualities is that he was loyal. So he was holding on to the friendship at the expense of his personal detriment, right? And then on the other end, like he wouldn't let go of this friend that was, causing him to get into mess. But then he had his brothers who were praying for him, who were giving him advice, and he was pushing them away because he didn't want to deal with prayer and church and God and stuff like that, right? And so the question is, how important are friendships to you, and having that accountability and knowing when, hey, this season is past and I need to let this particular relationship go. So the question is, how important is friendships and accountability? Well, I know Quincy got a brotherhood. They like my other brothers, but go ahead.
So what?
Your friends who are like my other brothers.
Yeah, I was just talking with a few of them a few minutes ago. So I think friendship and accountability is definitely important. But what I realize as you get older, you kind of start to narrow down and understand more what true friendship really is. So like when you're younger, say in your teens or in your early 20s, you kind of want to be friends with everybody. So everybody is your boy. You go this place, you go next place. Oh yeah, that's my boy from, and then as you hit 30 years and older, that number starts to get smaller and smaller. Not only because you start realizing that you don't have so much in common as people anymore, but sometimes you start to grow in a different direction and others may not grow, or they may be growing in a different direction, just have different interests. And then you start to realize, well, I'm doing this, and some of these who were really, you're still acquaintance, you're still friends, but you're not that close friends. So you'd be like, they may not approve of me doing something like this, but then you don't really care anymore. You don't even say that I don't care. You don't really think of it like that anymore. And you just kind of migrate towards
like-minded.
Yeah, exactly. So that's my thought on that.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
Boy, I thought I didn't want to say it, but yeah, you're right. You don't want to sound like an opportunist, but you don't really waste that time, for lack of a better term, with those friends, because friends are relative now. You only want to spend time with people who could develop you and who have the same passions and goals as you. I know I just had a thought earlier today about all the friends that I had when I was growing up in school, and to think where they are now, I couldn't tell you. I see them on Facebook, but they're completely different people, and you are, and I are as well. But in terms of Rich and Rome, I think Rich just didn't have anybody to hang with who he wanted to hold him accountable.
yeah.
He just was running away from accountability. And I haven't been through that phase. I know a lot of people do, but it's just a matter of when you make that transition to set a goal, you look for people who are actually like you, and whether they are friends or not, it doesn't matter. But yeah.
Okay, so then this question is, what was your favorite part of the book? That's the question, right? Yeah, what was your favorite part of the book?
So for me, there's a scene where Shiloh, she had to be like
And
multiple.
Shiloh is the heroine in the story.
Oh, yes. She had to be at multiple places at the same time. She didn't realize that she had like booked herself to be at the basketball game. She was going to be on a TV show, and I forget what the other thing was she had to do. She had to do something else. It was more than one thing. It was multiple things, and you know that something I could relate to. That happens. So that was like a very relatable um, uh, scene in the story where you have all these things happening at once, and you got to be like, well, I need to be here, here, and here. And then she just kind of took control of the situation, was like, all right, I need to change this, change that, and be here, be there. And then, like made a decision to do what she needed to do.
Prioritize.
Prioritize.
She prioritized what was important and what she could do and what she could delegate, because you don't have to do everything. And that's something that I mean, I can say women struggle with, trying to do everything, be mom, be the boss, be this, be that, like trying to do everything. So that's interesting to hear you say that. So men also struggle with the same thing, that hey, I have to be all things to all people, but you don't have to. You can delegate stuff and you can say no to stuff. And
Right.
no is a answer to a question that requires no explanation. Like, no, I can't. Sorry. So what about you, Philip? What was your favorite part of the book?
I have two.
Okay.
I have the favorite scenario in the book was obviously Shiloh and her her ability to keep it professional with Rome. I love that quality. I love it when she just shut him down, disregard his feelings. And she would just tell him, listen, look, extended hand for handshake, no hug, no nothing.
Right.
And my favorite scene in the book, I like antagonism, a little bit of melodrama. So not in real life, only in fiction. So the part when Fly, was it Barry?
Hi.
Sky. When Sky was over at Shiloh's house and they found out about the pictures with coffee, and Rome came over and he was trying to say, hey, listen, I know true. And she was torn because she believed him deep, deep down inside. And this was also telling too, because she didn't have a chance, or she didn't have to rely on the Holy Spirit or sex. She had to rely on her heart. And that was like a complete uh, pinnacle of what you call the anticlimax of the book. And because I mean, I know it completely. And it was just like I could see it clearly, and I can't wait for the movie to come out. But that was my favorite scene in the book. You have to read this.
I have a question for you. I wanted to give, I wanted to redeem Brent. I wanted to give Brent his own story. Brent is Sky. Is he redeemable? Or just he like, you hate him? Like, I hate him. Hater.
No, he needs his own story because remember, he was he was the opposite of Rome, but he ended up being worse than Rome. So you have to dig into that because there's something in behind that, and it's a lot of what is in him in reality, in real life, what people have to realize that they out front as this Christian, but if something comes up in the secular world today that's not in the Bible, how do they deal with it? Do they handle it like Christ, or do they just backslide and become a hater? Brent had his choice, and I don't think he did it because that was him wholly, but it's a part of him that needs to be explored. You need to. I would love to read that.
Oh, redemption for Brent.
Origin, like an origin story.
Origin
Yes.
is like what made you a hater? Why you a hater, player? Why are you a hater? Okay, now this we haven't said it before. I mean, I read it in the excerpt room. Is a professional basketball player. I was a huge basketball fan from like, let's say 89 and 99, and then I fell out of love with basketball when they went on that strike and never went back. So I have to ask this question, like, I know both of you watch sports. What is like one of your top basketball memories? Oh, and how did I do in the opening scene with Rome when he was playing basketball?
Pretty good. But I mean, like, I know, because obviously, because I used to live with you, I know you used to actually do commentating for the game, your own commentating for the games
For the
when you were
games.
really into basketball.
Watch the game on mute so that I can
Exactly.
commentate it myself.
So you definitely did a great job. You know what you're talking about. You know, you're a fan of the sport. You played the sport, so I think it was excellent.
So what's your favorite basketball memory?
So actually, my favorite, absolute favorite memory of basketball, I'm a huge Shaquille O'Neal fan, and I remember when he broke the rim
Backboard, yeah.
straight down. We was watching that game when he break the whole thing came down.
Yep.
That to me, that was the most. That show you how strong and powerful he was. That's when he was on the Orlando Magic. That's when I was a real Shaq fan on the Orlando Magic.
Yes.
And that for me, that I don't know if anything really topped that moment because I don't think anybody else ever done that.
I don't know if anybody else ever did that either, but that reminds me the Orlando Magic was my favorite basketball team. And when they won the 1995 Eastern Conference Finals, it's like one of my, like, I was like ecstatic because this was a young team with Shaquille, with Penny Hardaway, Nick Anderson, Dennis Scott, like I can name like everybody on the team. And they won the Eastern Conference Finals. They went to the finals, they got swept, but that was like one of my favorite memories because I felt like I went to the Eastern Conference Finals. So what about you, Philip? Is Philip frozen?
Boy, you really hit it. No, I'm here. I think again, like I said, I like the darker side of things. So when I watched The Malice in the Palace on Netflix about guys remember the Indiana Pacers game, I think it was with Detroit. And they had the big fight where Ron Artest went to the stands. I remember that game because I was in school at Florida Memorial, and I went to this salsa club at salsa night, and I was watching the game. And that time I used to bet on the game. I bet on that game with my last $200 that I was supposed to buy some bucks with.
Oh my gosh.
And I bet on the and I bet on the over, and I think the over was like 181 points that the two teams had to score. And it was about 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, and they were like at 176. And I was like, oh my goodness, I'm gonna starve for the rest of the semester. And then I saw Ron Artest laying on the scores table, and somebody threw a cup at him. And then all, broke loose, and it went under, and I won this. It wasn't my favorite moment because I won money, but it just was a turning point of basketball because, like you said, Candy, when they went on strike, everything changed. And I think around that same time, and just to see the history of Ron Artest and the whole entire Indiana Pacers, how Jermaine O'Neal career just got side railed from this just one thing. It just built upon what the NBA is today, why it's so like wrestling now.
Yeah.
It's so fake.
Yeah.
And it was a turning point. So that was like my favorite.
Entertainment is more entertainment than like sports. Don't let them hear that because they're like always debating about, the athletes now are more athletic than, back in the day. But anyway, so we're at the end of the conversation. This was so good. Thank you so much for joining me tonight and answering my questions. Thank you for reading my books. So we'll do this again after y'all read the next. There you go. Oh, Romeo. So thank you, Quincy.
Yes.
Thank you, Philip. Thank you, Walford. He dropped off. I know that he said he had like 30%. He had 30% battery, so his phone might have died. So thank you very much. Thank you, I Aspire Books, for hosting us in your group for this live conversation. Thank you, Cheryl. So thank you and good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you. Get the book.
Get the book. Get the books. Okay, good night for real. Bye.